Hi, everybody. I'm Josh, and this is a review of Sean Curran's Basic Faith. Now, Sean Curran is not an artist that I am familiar with, as over the last decade, I haven't really listened to a whole lot of Christian music. I grew up in church, but around when I was 14 or 15, I realized Christian music was really boring, and I wanted to listen to other things. So for the last decade, I've listened to nothing but secular music. And now, as I've grown in my faith and relationship with the Lord, I have found that I want to listen to Christian music. And I hope to find Christian artists that are actually interesting and not boring. I figured, why not give it another try? So I opened up my Apple Music, I went to the Christian page and found new releases. And this was one of the new releases, and I figured, why not just start here? So here we are. Sean Curran's Basic Faith. Now, let's start with the first song, Lead Me to You. Now, musically, this song is okay. I would say it's pretty cookie cutter in its production. There just isn't anything that pushes the musical boundary, and it's pretty safe for the most part. Lyrically, it sends a message about how he's thankful for all the things that he's gone through, whether it being good and whether it being bad, because they have led to his relationship with the Lord currently, which honestly totally can relate. But overall, not the most musically interesting, but lyrically gets a thumbs up from me. Now on to the second song, Come Now. I would say musically it's just about, if not more, cookie cutter than the last song. There's just nothing really compelling about what's happening musically. And lyrically, so musically, it sounds like it's really trying to be a worship song. But lyrically, it's not. I'd say musically, it kind of follows the same structures as a worship song, which, I mean, it's fine, but, I mean, like, this isn't like a worship album, so maybe make it more interesting. And lyrically, if it was a worship song, it wouldn't be a very, like, deep worship song, as it seems more focused on oneself rather than Christ, as there's a lot of lyrics about how I do this or I do that because of you, which I think that if it were to be a worship song, it should be more him focused than it would be like let's look at some of these lyrics actually. For example, some of these lyrics here as to be read. I'm a desert heart on a pilgrimage. Lord, I'm thirsty, thirsty. Let the water touch my lips, spring a well within my soul. Desperate hearts do desperate things, so I'm begging, begging. Just a child on my knees for the real thing. That's the second verse. And then the chorus also is, come now, I'm ready for the presence of heaven. You told me if I seek you that I was going to find you. So I'm watching, I'm waiting, I'm hoping, I'm praying. You told me if I seek you that I was going to find you. So come now. I don't have a problem with those lyrics as a song, but just more so as I do those lyrics as a worship song. As something that stands alone on its own, that's great. Like, these lyrics are really good, but if it's being used in a worship context, I don't think so. As a worship song, it shouldn't be focused on things that I'm doing, and it should be focused more on the thing that I'm worshiping, and in this case, the Lord, which is also the only thing that I should be worshiping. So, overall, musically, whatever. Lyrically, good, just not as a worship song. So let's go on to the next song, Basic Faith. Again, this song is pretty safe and uninteresting. It just feels like the instrumentals were an afterthought because the only purpose of writing this song was to get the lyrical content out, which I would say the lyrical content, pretty good. I really like the lyrics on this song. He sings about three main topics. The first one being overselling or pretending how close he is with the Lord with this line, flashy praying. 2, struggling with legalism as he sings about how he complicates aspects of his faith, putting God into his own box and trying to make things happen the way that he wants them to happen and not how the way that the Lord wants them to happen. I said it like that, which after all those points makes him reevaluate everything that he's doing in his life, stripping everything back and just returning to what it means to have a basic faith. Title of the song and the album. Just going back to the basics. Stop overcomplicating things. Stop trying to twist things into what you want them to be. And just have them be what the Lord calls them to be. It's a great concept for a song. And just something that I think Christians need to hear on a regular basis. On a regular basis. Stop trying to control God and let him be in control. All right, song number 4 on this album is Always, Always Yours. This was the first song on the album that I actually thought was pretty musically interesting. We actually get some dynamics on this song. It starts kind of slower, but as the song progresses, it adds more instruments and it becomes larger and bolder and more, which I just thought was really good. I really liked the riffs that were happening. We actually get some dynamics in the song with the build-up in the beginning that slowly introduces different instruments and sounds, which brings us to a chorus that, after all that building up, isn't this like overblown, like way out of proportioned chorus. It fits exactly how it should within everything that was built up. It's not overdone. And I think that was a really smart play, because a lot of CCM music just will overdo it. It's like, all right, we get it. I mean, I think that this was really well written as it got to where it needed to, and then it just did not jump the shark in the sounds that it was trying to create. And lyrically, it's okay. It's just another song that tells the Lord that no matter what, everything is for him. And now that brings us on to the next song, Crazy Love. Now I'm going to preface this by saying I didn't know that this was a cover song before I wrote the review for this next part. So keep that in mind. Not that I say anything bad. Honestly, it's a pretty good song. I think the song has good bones. If it was an acoustic folk song, it would be so good. But unfortunately, we got this overproduced track that is just a little too clean and polished to sound good. Like, you would think that the cleaner and the more polished a song would be, the better it would sound. That is not the case, at least not in my opinion. I like a raw sound. I want to hear some instruments that sound like the way that they should sound for the most part. I mean, I still love like distorted guitars and all those things, but usually with those things comes a little bit of edginess, a little bit of raw aspects to it that aren't quite so like uniformed. They're just a little bit more unique. But if we look past all of the overproduction, it's a really great song musically. Lyrically, on the other hand, it's fine. Probably the least dense song on the whole album. There just isn't anything very compelling about the things that he's saying in this song. All right, so the next song on this album is Same Jesus. From a musical standpoint, I don't think it's a bad song. Again, if it was less uniformed and polished, I think it would be a better song. But other than that, that's my biggest qualm with it musically. I think lyrically, it's solid, as he sings about how Jesus has been the same always and forever. And that is biblical, and I cannot argue with that, and I will not argue with that. So let's go on to the next song. Ain't Seen Nothing. Now, this might be the most uninteresting, both lyrically and musically, of all the songs on this album. Now, this is what they would play in the background of a business presentation. There would be some video playing in the background with slides of men shaking hands and blah, blah, blah. And then the video would end and the guy on stage would go, "You ain't seen nothing yet." Then continue to show what the rollout for the next quarter is going to be, promising a lot of things, but then never follow through it with any of it. That's this song. That's the background music for it. That's all I need to say about that one. Next song, Another Glimpse. The majority of this song is pretty run-of-the-mill up until the last 30 seconds. Now, this 30 seconds is probably my favorite part of the entire album. It certainly brings a lot of things to the table that should be brought to the table musically. If the rest of the album were to have kind of used aspects of whatever he was doing here and just kind of sprinkled it throughout the rest of the album, this album would be incredible. Like, this is so dynamic and interesting. I listened to this part over and over again. I repeated it like several times because I thought it was just so good. I couldn't stop listening to it. Just wish it was longer, and I wish that there was more of this type of thing throughout the rest of the album, because it kept me engaged and it made me want to listen to more. Like, I listen to these albums casually before I start doing my reviews, and I was doing the dishes when I was listening to this, and I stopped and I was like, dude, that was really cool. And then it ended and I was sad because it just continued on to, pretty run-of-the-mill contemporary Christian music. I was sad and I was doing the dishes. I will say, though, the lyrical content of this song is good. It's the old classic, God is good, and in all the glory and honor goes to him. Great message. I agree. That's all I have to say. Next song. This song is Nothing Gets Better, I'm Done. This song is straight up the song that would be played at a youth conference. It would get all the prepubescent church kids that have never done anything wrong in their lives just absolutely wailing and crying because they haven't been giving Christ their all. And they're going to rededicate their lives to Jesus for the 100th time. Now, I can say that because that was me at the Dare to Share conference when I was 13 years old, doing the exact same thing to a song with a similar message. Which I will say that I remember I went to my youth pastor later that evening because Greg Sear was like, hey, if you're feeling it, that you need to dedicate your life to Jesus, go to your youth pastor, tell him that you're going to do these things, and just admit your sins. And I went and did that, and Russ looked at me and he said, I baptized you earlier this year. And there's a lot of things going on when you're 13. What can I say? But besides all of that, lyrically, musically, Next song, He Who Is to Come. Now insert other things that were said throughout this album that were not musically compelling here. Now, before I say anything about the lyrical content, there is rhyming at the beginning of this song. And I was like, dude, a rhyme scheme? I love a good rhyme scheme. Sure hope that there's more of this throughout the rest of the song. Nope. Basically, it's only in the first verse and that's it. In this song, he sings about how Jesus is going to come back again. I agree. Next song. Let It Take the Time It Takes. I like the music in this song. It's nice. It's not overdone. It's kept pretty simple. My only qualm is how he sings it. Now, Sean isn't like the greatest singer by any means. I wouldn't say he's a bad singer. I just wouldn't say he's the greatest singer. I just think that the way that he delivers the words in this song could have been better. I just think that the delivery of the words just aren't as interesting as they could be. I'm not like the greatest musician in the world, so I don't know that I could do much better, but that's just what I think. Lyrically, it's a little less straightforward than other songs on this album as we start getting into a more poetic style of writing, which can sometimes lead to different interpretations to what he is trying to say. To be honest, it wasn't quite so easy for me to come to the conclusion of what he was trying to say, as I am the kind of person that will pick apart each line, each word, and be like, oh, because he said these things, that means that this happens, without looking at the larger scheme of things and being like, oh, well, because of this chunk and this chunk, it means this overarching thing. I hope that made sense. So it's like when you're reading your Bible and you get super focused on one verse that says one thing, or even half of the verse that says something, and then you also just don't read the surrounding text to go along with what that says. That's what I was doing in these lyrics. But when I took a step back and looked at it, I decided I needed to ask my wife what she thought. So the conclusion that she came to through this was that sometimes there are ebbs and flows within one's spiritual journey. And sometimes we're going to be in the pits of despair and we're not going to be really trusting the Lord. And then there's sometimes that we're going to be on the peaks of the mountains and we are just worshiping the Lord like wholeheartedly, which that helps really tie all the themes of this album together. I think that fits really nice in the midst of everything else that he has stated on this album, as there's been a lot of reflection and just deep dives into one's spiritual walk and reevaluating just what that looks like and the things that we are doing within that. To sum up all the thoughts that I have on this album is that I would say that Sean Curran is a very good musician. Although I did find a lot of the songs to be uninteresting in their production, the songs themselves were actually pretty good. It just didn't like how they were produced. The chord progressions that are being put out there, if you were to just cut it back a little bit and do it a little differently, I mean, I think it would ultimately be a really good song. I just think maybe he just suffers the curse of all the rest of the contemporary Christian artists that have been tied to worship bands or whatever label it is that are pushing them to make the same cookie cutter whatever. And there are people that enjoy those things, and I just happen to not be one of them, as I'm looking for something a little bit more interesting musically. You can be a good musician both lyrically and musically. And that's what I'm looking for. And I know from doing a little bit of research is that Sean was and maybe still is a music leader. And that definitely shows as a primary influence in his music, as they all sound fairly worshipy, while also it's kind of pushing into the ranks of like, I'm trying to escape worship music, but I'm also still kind of tied to it at the same time. So I wouldn't say that this album is bad. There are certainly quite a few areas that I felt could have been more interesting. There are certainly quite a few areas that left me to desire more, that left me feeling just tired of hearing the same thing over and over again, because I want to hear something that's a little less run-of-the-mill Christian music. My closing statements will be, I would just encourage Sean to take more risks, like he did on Another Glimpse. Like, dude, that was so good. Let's do more of that. If I had to give this album a score, I'd probably give it a 6 out of 10. And your thoughts. What do you think? What do you feel? If you were to give it a number, what would it land on? Let me know in the comments. I hope you have a wonderful week, and I hope to see you next time. Thanks for watching.